Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, OnScreen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to OnScreen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about Wonka, which is now streaming on HBO Max. So we didn't have a topic for this week and just decided, what's streaming? What can we talk about as a main topic? And we ended up picking Wonka, and we've watched that, and that will be a full spoilers discussion at the end of this podcast. But let's kick things off with On the Horizon. On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff coming up in the next week or so. We've got a number of big things coming up in the next week or so. We're going to start things off with X-Men 97, which is coming to Disney Plus on Wednesday, March 20th, despite them firing the writer.
Yeah.
Disney firing the writer for unmentioned reason. But that is coming Wednesday, March 20th to Disney Plus. On Thursday, March 21st, Three Body Problem is coming to Netflix. This is the next one from the creators of Game of Thrones, based on a novel that's well-known and beloved among sci-fi nerds. So at least this one's complete, so they don't have to make up their own story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also on Thursday, March 21st, Roadhouse is coming to Amazon Prime. This is the remake with Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, it looks pretty good. Just have to see the actual movie. But that's coming to Amazon Prime on Thursday, March 21st. Dragon's Dogma 2 is coming on Friday, March 22nd to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. I know you're excited for that one, although you have about 57 quadrillion games lined up in your queue.
I sure do, but I mean, I think this one is definitely jumping the line.
Oh, here's another one that might be jumping the line. Rise of the Ronin, which is coming also on Friday, March 22nd to PS5.
Really unfortunate that these games decide to drop on the same day. It's like, why? But I think for me, like, as good as Rise of the Ronin looks, I think Dragon's Dogma 2 looks better, so.
Well, let's talk about the one that's at the very front of your list, which is Princess Peach Showtime.
Oh,
also coming on Friday, March 22nd to the Switch.
I'm gonna be honest, Princess Peach Showtime looks like a game I'd probably beat in like an afternoon. It looks like there's like don't get me wrong, it looks cool. It looks like there's a lot of like fun things to do in the game, but it also looks like it's probably just like a very short and not like a very deep experience.
I've heard that it skews young, that it's very easy, but that it's also very fun.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've heard. Like, what I've heard is basically, yes, it skews young, yes, it's easy, but it's a really fun game. And it's Good Feel. We know who the developer is now, so Good Feel did like all the kind of artsy mascot games. Kirby's Epic Yarn, Yoshi's Crafted World, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, yeah, it looks good. Looks decent.
Also on Friday, March 22nd, Late Night with the Devil. This is
excellent. I'm gonna be honest.
Pretty crazy looking movie.
Yeah.
Been getting a lot of buzz. People have been interested in it. And then lastly, on Friday, March 22nd, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire comes to theaters.
I'm actually excited for this one. This one looks.
You need to see Afterlife.
I do. I need to go and watch Afterlife. This just looks like a lot of fun. It looks more like Ghostbusters than like Afterlife did from the trailers, but I still need to watch that one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a direct follow-up to it, so yeah. What we should do is we should probably, you know, when we figure out when Frozen Empire is coming to a streaming service and when we plot that we're going to talk about that movie, we should like the week before do Afterlife, and then just get them like 2 weeks in a row. Just do our new Ghostbusters episodes.
Yeah.
But that is it for On the Horizon, and now we're moving on to On Beat. On Beat is our news segment. And we've got two things kind of to go over. We got the Academy Awards, and then we've got a few trailers to talk about. I'm going to start with the Academy Awards. We're not going to go over every winner and all the percentages and everything like that. We're just going to go over the big categories and some of the more interesting categories as well. So starting off with the biggest category, Best Picture was taken by Oppenheimer. Best Actor was taken by Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. Best Actress, Emma Stone for Poor Things. Best Supporting Actress was Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. Best Supporting Actor was Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer. Best Director, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer. And then the more interesting categories, just based on who won, is first you have Best Animated Feature, which ended up going to The Boy and the Heron by Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli.
Yes.
I think a lot of people thought it was going to be the second Spider-Verse movie.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that too. I saw there was some...
The voice of Miles Morales thought that too.
Yeah, there was some salt online about this, but I mean, Miyazaki's the king.
Yeah, if you're gonna lose to the goat.
But
I haven't seen The Boy and the Heron, so I can't discuss that. I have seen the second Spider-Verse movie, and I don't think it was as good as the first one. So it very much feels incomplete. It very much ends on a cliffhanger. It very much ends not just on a cliffhanger, but on a cliffhanger where it feels like it's just not done. So it's hard for me to acknowledge that as being on the same scale as a Hayao Miyazaki movie,
Right.
Even though I haven't seen that Hayao Miyazaki movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the next interesting category is Best Visual Effects, which went to Godzilla -1, which cements, I believe now, that not a single MCU movie has won in special effects and visual effects.
Right. It deserves it for the budget they did. A funny story that I saw about Godzilla -1 winning Best Visual Effects is apparently the president and CEO of Toho did not want to submit the movie for consideration for an Oscar, just under the assumption that it wouldn't win anyway. And I think somebody a member of the production or somebody was just come on, submission fee is only $200. Just do it. And it was oh, okay, it's not gonna win. and then it did, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because Godzilla -1 had a shoestring budget. And from what I've seen, from what I've heard from visual effects artists that, have talked about it, is that it's really maximizing that budget. It's doing a lot for what it is. And it impressed them, So amongst visual effects fans and creators, it was impressive. So that's one thing I could say for I haven't seen the movie. It's just an issue of that's around when I was moving. So I just didn't have the time to go out and see it for the 1 week it was in theaters out here. But yeah, I kind of think that it's nice. It just feels a little weird how, the MCU just keeps getting disregarded in this category when it's usually leading the way in the entire field, basically, for visual effects and stuff. And Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in particular had some really detailed, lifelike full CG characters that emoted and stirred a lot of emotion in the audience. And then it also did a lot of other interesting things. When we talked about the movie on the podcast, I'd mentioned that there's a full body double of Peter Quill that weighs 20 pounds or something.
Oh yeah, they did fantastic.
It was designed so that Karen Gillan could walk carrying him, his unconscious body, and it would look like it was effortless to her. And so they needed it to be super light, and this body is super realistic looking, and it's just, it's kind of an accomplishment. It's kind of mind blowing when you see it and hear about the weight of it. It's really? How did they do that, So it's kind of a little annoying that the MCU is still getting disregarded, and you'd think at least in the visual effects category it would get some attention, but apparently not. But I've heard from visual effects artists that Godzilla -1 was extremely impressive for what it was working with, that it punches way above its weight. So it's always good to see stories like that as well.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is it for the Academy Awards, and now we're going to move on to trailers. We've narrowed down our trailer list to 3, and we're going to start off with Parasyte the Grey. What's interesting about this is that this is based on an anime and manga that I've watched that I quite enjoyed, and it's a completely different take. I think it's basically going to be, it's in the same world, but in a different part of the world, and then they're taking a few liberties from there. They're making it so that basically everybody knows about the parasites, whereas in the anime it was kind of basically anybody that saw them was pretty much killed by them, so nobody, there'd be these violent deaths and they'd cover him up and stuff, and nobody really survives to tell the tale, but beyond that.
Right, yeah.
So that's a little bit like stretching with, the idea that it could be in the same universe there. It's also interesting because this is being done by South Korea and is set in South Korea, whereas the original is, obviously set in Japan. So it's just interesting in that regard.
It's fine. It's not a straight adaptation. I'm not super familiar with the original property anyway. It looks cool. It looks neat.
It's done by the director of Train to Busan, which is like a really well-loved zombie movie from South Korea.
Right.
So It's got that going for it, but a lot of it looks like they kind of generified it a bit, making it my own words. They made it a little bit generic, made it feel more like an action movie where like the original series kind of had a pretty psychological bent to it that looks like it's not really there from what I've seen in the trailer.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting for sure. Next up, we got the most recent trailer. I believe this is the third trailer for Three Body Problem, which is finally kind of getting across what the plot seems to be, which is there seems to be some kind of like aliens are coming and there's something having to do with VR. And apparently, and this isn't in the trailer, but I learned that the Three Body Problem refers to like an idea of if a planet had three suns and how that would affect like gravity and be catastrophic and what that effect would be, which I guess is like a physics prompt that is brought up in the series.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
So, yeah, this is from the creators of Game of Thrones. That's a mixed reaction for a lot of people, I think, but
it's
positive thing is it's complete. It's like based on a complete work.
Yeah. The not positive thing is, the Three Body Problem as a novel series, from my understanding, is supposed to be one of those things that's like unadaptable. It's supposed to be because like it's so dense and like complex.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting how this turns out.
There have been a few of those that have been made into properties, and the creators of the Three Body Problem were the creators of another one of those.
Right, yeah.
Thrones, which was also considered like an unfilmable project.
Unfilmable by the stance of scale. There's nothing particularly complicated about the concepts Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire.
Not the concepts, but just like in
this is supposed
structure.
To be like conceptually, like, like really like weird, bizarre. That's the problem. Not so much like
definitely.
Like, oh yeah, we need like the budget for like a 1 million person army and dragons. Like it's kind of like, oh yeah, like how do you present these concepts, in a live action?
I've been hearing good things in that regard.
Yeah.
From critics that have had it. They say that there's a little dumbing down that's happened, which is to be expected, especially on something that's that heady of a property, but that it kind of works, and that's kind of what people seem to be saying about it. So we'll have to see if it's any good when that comes out, because that's coming out really soon, as we just mentioned in our On the Horizon segment. And then lastly, we got the new trailer for Fallout, which looks a lot better than what we got before. Like this time we actually are getting kind of an idea, some emotion. We're getting some character moments. We're getting like an idea of like how things are going to progress. We're getting a certain actor providing a voice that's very recognizable immediately.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, Fallout looking good. I'm kind of excited for that now. It's Jonathan Nolan, who, both nailed and then botched Westworld. It's similar to the Three Body Problem in that like with Game of Thrones, you have an example of like, wow, like the first several seasons of Game of Thrones, they were able to do something that people didn't think was really going to be able to be done. And it was like a huge accomplishment, very well done series. And then by the end, people were like, no, fuck this series, because the last season dropped the ball so hard. And Fallout is going to be in a similar boat to Three Body Problem, because Westworld did the same thing that Game of Thrones did in a sense.
So I will say that Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are actually the showrunners for this series, though. They're producing through their production company. The series co-creators are Geneva Robertson Dworet and Graham Wagner, who are co-creating, developing, and producing, and this is being developed through Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan's Kilter Films production company.
Yeah, but it's still, the recognizable names are Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, and they are definitely attached. They're not just a name only.
Right, yeah, they're definitely attached. But like, They're not the main showrunners for this one.
Yeah, but there isn't a lot to say about the actual showrunners.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, yeah, like, it's not going to be, like, the same as, like, how, like, they handled Westworld, you know?
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's how they handled Westworld Season 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that started interesting, but then they tried to get, like, way too complex and, like, too smart with it. Like, oh, yeah, and it just ended up being pretty stupid by the end.
Yeah. So we'll have to see how Fallout turns out, but I'm still interested. I mean, it looks good from the trailer. And hey, Walton Goggins.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Say anything with Walton Goggins, I'm down.
Yeah. That is it for On Beat, and now we're going to move on to our final segment, full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, is going to be Wonka. This is directed by Paul King and written by Paul King and Simon Farnaby, who did Paddington 2, which I have not seen but have heard amazing things about.
The Paddington films are cool darlings, so.
Yeah, they're very well respected.
Yeah.
And Paddington 2 in particular, I've heard amazing things about, including a whole like subplot in was it The Weight of Massive Talent, that movie with Nick Cage? Actually had a plot point about that.
Oh, really?
About how good Paddington 2 was. So this is my first chance to really kind of see is what Paddington 2 stylistically might represent, since it's the same director and writer involved here. And we got Willy Wonka being played by Timothée Chalamet, also known as Tim Burton's Wet Dream.
Does a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Sorry, way better than Johnny Depp in that remake. Sorry.
The Johnny Depp remake holds a special place in my heart because I went to a screening of it and they gave us candy.
Oh, nice.
So they bribed me.
Yeah, they bribed you. You're as easily bribed as the police chief in this film with candy.
Yeah. So, broad strokes, what did you think about this movie, this musical?
I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. It's funny because, like, it's cliche to say, I don't want to say this cliche, I want to say this meaningfully. It was actually magical. It actually felt magical to watch.
Yeah. And I really like the way that they played on the theme for Pure Imagination.
Oh, yeah.
Several times throughout the movie and then had it come to fruition.
Yeah, ending the movie on Pure Imagination and the creation of, like, the factory was, like, probably the perfect
that was a huge
film.
Nostalgia bomb.
Yes.
Because it looked exactly like it, you know?
Yeah,
like
they hit all the points.
Yeah.
The chocolate river, the teacups that you could eat.
There's kind of a polarized film, some people really liked it, a lot of people hate it, called Ready Player Run, that was done by Steven Spielberg, based on a book. And, it's all about nostalgia, the movie. And one of the things they did that wasn't in the book, but they did for the movie, is there's a whole scene where they recreated basically The Shining, like the whole mansion from The Shining. And the moment they walk into the mansion and it's just 100% accurate, looks exactly like they walked right into The Shining, was like the audience like gasped, just because it was like, oh my god, like it was just an unexpected nostalgia bomb, you know. And even though it's Wonka, you know, so you're like on guard for that kind of stuff. The story's so completely different, so kind of unrelated to anything from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And then when the factory starts coming together, and it's like, oh my god, it looks exactly like it. It's not just like stylistically it looks the same. It's like it looks like they really sourced the materials and nailed the look like perfectly. And yeah, that the nostalgia bomb that it gave me was like huge. I was impressed by that moment.
Oh yeah, that was a great send off to the film. Yeah, no, I thought the film was wonderful. Everybody did a fantastic job in there. Timothée Chalamet was like, perfect as a young Willy Wonka.
A character who's kind of like smart, but like super naive.
Yes, like very naive. There's this great bit at the beginning when he's like, when he's taken to that hotel for a place to stay, and they're trying to like, get him to sign a contract that would basically get him into indentured servitude. And the girl who ends up being his companion for the entire movie, her first appearance, she tells him to read the fine print. And, and there's this whole thing, and he says, oh, it sounds like she said, read the fine print. And then he's like, you don't mind if I take a look at this for a moment? And it looks like he's doing it, and then he just comes back with, yep, everything's in order.
Yeah, they're about to club him over the head and abduct him.
He's like, everything's in order. And the woman, like, trying to, like, trick him is, like, surprised that he came back with that conclusion.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, okay. And then, like, not long after that, like, it's revealed, like, he can't read.
Yeah, he's illiterate.
Yeah, he's illiterate. So it's a great bit because it's like, he heard her, he took her advice, and it was worth it. He couldn't read anyway. So it's like he still walked into the trap.
Yeah.
It's just funny.
Scene.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, like, kind of cute, funny moments and stuff. There's also some darkness, which I'm glad they kept in place.
Yes.
You have the chocolate cartel, which is made up of Slugworth, Prodnose, and Fickle Grubber. These character names did sound very Harry Potter character.
Oh yeah, very Harry Potter.
Very, like, weird British name characters. But yeah, they basically are horrible people that are orchestrating even murders at certain points.
Yeah.
In the movie. And
well, they got the market for chocolate on lock, and they don't want any newcomers coming in and messing up, like, their situation.
Mm-hmm. And it shows, like, the corruption of who's involved, because they have the support and service of the chief of police and the priest of the church.
Yeah, the head priest of the church, played by Rowan Atkinson, by the way, who's like
Mr. Bean.
Yeah, Mr. Bean. Also Blackadder, Edmund Blackadder. British, like, he's also really famous for that role.
He's British national treasure.
Yes, he is. I know most kids in America probably seen Mr. Bean airing on PBS at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's how I discovered him. But yeah, he doesn't have, like, a major role in this, but he has a few good scenes. Keegan-Michael Key plays the corrupt police chief who's really easily bribed with candy. And there's another great bit with him where progressively, as the movie goes on, he gets bigger and bigger because he's, like, eating all this candy he's being bribed with.
Yeah, and they keep giving him, like, absurd amounts. And then, yeah. And then he, like, at the end, he opened up the police cruiser and couldn't even get out.
Yeah, he couldn't even get out of the car.
And then, like, all these wrappers just fell out from the inside of the car.
That's another great, like, running gag throughout the film, but, like, he's fantastic. He's easily corruptible and easily bribed, but also, like, he's also, like, he knows what he's doing is wrong, and he does have a bit of a conscience about it, but he's also, like, just so easily,
hopelessly addicted.
Yeah, hopelessly addicted to chocolate that he's willing to go along with it anyway.
And then we have another notable, iconic actor playing a very interesting role, and that's Hugh Grant, who's playing the only Oompa Loompa we see in this.
Yes.
In this movie.
We do see a few more Oompa Loompas in, like, when he's
in, like, a flashback kind of thing.
But he's talking about his backstory.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, that's the only time we see anything other than him.
Yeah, and Hugh Grant does a great job of making, like, an Oompa Loompa, like an indignant gentleman.
This movie, it's an origin story of sorts. So we get, like, the origin story of Willy Wonka's relationship with the Oompa Loompas. It appears like he stole chocolate from them. And Hugh Grant, his Oompa Loompa, he has to, like, get back what was stolen.
1,000 times.
1,000 times. So he's been, like, stealing chocolate from Willy for, like, a while. A couple weeks of, like, Willy Wonka. He's like, oh yeah, there's this little orange man with green hair, like, stealing candy from me. And, like, nobody believes him. Like, the girl, Noodle is her name. Like, he tells that to her, and she doesn't believe him at all. Like, it just sounds crazy.
Yeah, a little orange man with green hair.
It's funny because, like,
candy.
He doesn't show up till, like, an hour in the film.
Yeah.
But
shows up and he gets caught. The scene where he shows up, I believe, is the one where he gets caught and manages to escape pretty easily and is just kind of a nuisance after that point until he eventually ends up helping Wonka at the end because some candy that was given or was meant to be given to him by Wonka that would have paid off Wonka's debt was taken by these other chocolate cartel people. And in doing so, they ended up stealing from him and putting him against it, which is kind of a smart play by Wonka to set them up to be, attacked by the Oompa Loompa. But yeah, like you said, it's a very fun, charming, magical movie, and it's got some great little musical numbers. I love the musical number in the beginning about how many shillings he has in his pocket.
Oh, yeah.
And it keeps going down.
It keeps going down, yeah. It's like continually charged for things. Like there's a shoe shine boy who's like, like always there, like on his shoes. And he looks down and he's like, oh, Can I have $1, please? They call him something else, but I'm blanking right now, so.
It's something, a silver shilling, something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, not shilling. They had like a really good name for it, and I'm just blanking.
Yeah, but he started off, I think, with like 7 in his pocket.
Yeah.
And then
He
by the end, he had
drops,
1 left, and he throws it in the air and tries to catch it, and it slips through and falls into the
Well,
sewer.
it falls, he throws it in the air. It does land in his pocket, but his pocket has a hole in it. So it goes right through the hole and into the sewer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great.
It was just pretty funny, like, the way for him to end up losing his last one. And an act of generosity before that, giving it to a homeless mother.
Yes.
Which, it's not just a funny musical moment, but it kind of like establishes the world, establishes the kind of character that Wonka is, and then also just kind of sticks some humor in there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's an economical song, is what we're saying.
Honestly, I liked all the numbers. Like, I didn't think there was really a bad one in the bunch.
Scrub.
Yeah, Scrub is, it's alright. Yeah, yeah, you're right. But for the most part, I enjoyed them.
Yeah. I think that pretty much covers what I have to say about the movie. Do you have anything else to say about Wonka?
I think that pretty much covers it. It was a fun, entertaining movie. I just thought, man, they don't make a lot of movies like this anymore, do they?
No.
Yeah.
Well, they try, I think, sometimes, but they usually don't come out that well.
Right, yeah.
Apparently, this is what Paddington 2 is like, so.
Oh, okay.
I need to give that a shot, I guess, because I've heard great things about Paddington, so I need to watch those two.
Same. It's funny, too, because, like, this turned out so well, because when they announced it, I was definitely very skeptical of the concept. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, sure, we're doing that.
Even at that point, though, I had heard all the stuff about the Paddington movies,
Right, yeah.
And how critically lauded it is. And then I'm like, okay, so it's in good hands for that kind of role, so it should be good.
Yeah.
But, ended up being a very good, fun time with some cool musical numbers and some nice visuals. At times it looked like it was shot for 3D.
Yeah, it does.
There's a lot of like, ooh, these things would be flying out at you in the movie theater kind of moments,
Oh, yeah. If this was, they could have easily did this for 3D, I think be even more aggressive and obnoxious with the effects. But I mean, I don't think this was that fad's dead. So, I mean, you can still see 3D like in IMAX, but like nothing is like shot in like 3D, like purpose built for it anymore. It's just like, it's all like, the post.
Well, the Avatar films are still made very squarely for 3D.
The second one was still?
Yeah.
I guess like maybe like James Cameron is still on that, but yeah.
And they're still doing I'm sure Wonka was in 3D,
it's the post, that they had in post. It's not like filmed in 3D.
Yeah, but honestly, I think a lot of times that works out better.
And even at the height of like the fad of it, like very few movies were filmed in 3D. It was the majority were that post-processing 3D effect added to the film.
Even though that is the case, I think a lot of times that ended up working out better. Like one of my complaints with 3D in movies was that it just made it look kind of blurry because you're seeing from two different eye perspectives, and when you have it separated like that, like when it's filmed separated, it makes it look like blurry where the character isn't, because it's like the character overlaps and then it's almost like semi-transparent on the sides or something, where when they actually cut it out and do it in post, it looks more like solid, but it looks kind of flat, like it looks like a pop-up book almost, so it's like they both have negatives, but unless there's a lot of effort put into it, like with say Avatar, where that's the whole thing is the 3D, I think it ends up looking better when it's done in post instead of filmed in 3D, unless it's like the entire point is the 3D, like with Avatar.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
But that's my little off topic.
Yeah, that's getting off the point of everything. So, yeah.
But yeah, Wonka, good and fun, magical, as you said, movie. And you should check it out if you haven't yet, if it hasn't already been completely spoiled for you. But yeah, I really dug the way they brought pure imagination into it. I think that was the crown jewel. I think I was kind of mixed on the movie up until that point. And then I'm like, oh, okay, they really hit me. And then everything that came with that, seeing the factory and everything, just all that together, just, really hit me at the end in a way I wasn't expecting.
Oh, yeah.
So that is it for our full spoiler segment and for our podcast. Next week, we are going to be discussing Prey. This is the movie in the Predator franchise that's all about Native Americans facing off against the Predator in the very early times. Not sure about the year, but this was done, I believe, by Dan Trachtenberg that did this. So yeah, I've heard good things about it. We never got around to watching it. Came out, like, was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before. I'm not sure. But it came out a while ago. And we're going to finally get around to watching it, and we'll discuss that next week on the podcast. Until then, thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up the container story for any of our podcast episodes and scroll down to the last paragraph, you'll see all of our relevant links to our SoundCloud page, our RSS feed. It's all there. You can also subscribe to this podcast to your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of this podcast is available on our YouTube channel, as well as a bunch of other content, including the full 300 episodes of our last podcast, The Weekly Set. But check all of that out on screen, on your podcast client of choice, or YouTube. Check it all there. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.